Thokozani Bantabatala. My name is Gokonomi, and today I'm actually having a chat with Vivian Chuene. I hope I'm saying it well. And I think more than anything for me, I've been led to having this conversation with her around music. You know, I don't know if you guys know, Uti. The word sangoma means actually exactly that, you know. It means Uti sangoma. So we almost sang ourselves into wellness, or we sang ourselves into healing. And I think it's a part of our work that people take for granted, but it's actually so important, you know. And so I'd listen to podcast Yaga Vivian, which is Coffee Conversations, and I'd find myself like almost going to like a completely different place, and like the music that she showcases on there is like quite different. It's not what like young people listen to typically, and I'd almost feel like, geez, why is she touching my soul like from a different level? And today I thought maybe let's talk to that, you know. Let's talk to the musical aspect of healing, around healing, and maybe what it means to her and why she even started that particular podcast. So, hi Vivian, how are you?
Togoza, Kabela, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm very excited to be meeting up with you. And I think we must just maybe start with an intro of Vivian. Who is she from a cultural perspective? Because Vivian is like a culture curator, guys. That's the title. And I thought even that is so beautiful. And I just want her to introduce herself in that way so we understand who she is.
So, Vivian is a culture curator, like you've already said. But I like to tap into the beginning of everything, right? And as you've already said, a huge part of my gift is actually very musically inclined. Like you said, Siyizangoma, we are the ones that come with song. So I have a very vivid memory of growing up in this very musical home.
Wow.
Whether it was, I was raised by my grandmother, MaChuene, who I'm named after.
Wow.
And so what happened is, in my formative years, I have a twin brother who is also gifted, and we share in the gift of music. And so I remember I used to dream in song, which I still do now. But I'd have these moments where I'm sleeping as a child and I'm hearing music, but it's loud and it's very clear, and even the scenes within the dreams are musical. They are musically led, and I didn't understand it then. Or sometimes there'll be music playing in the household. My household was very, very musical. It was very matriarchal. It was my mom, my grandmother, my aunt, all in the same house.
Beautiful.
And so our Saturdays and Sundays were filled with music.
Sure.
I remember my twin brother and I will wake up at like 5 a.m. in the morning, and we're in front of the TV watching cartoons. But we know that at a certain time, the records will come out, and they'll be playing like your Sankomotas.
Yeah,
jazz. Yes. And so I started singing along and learning the lyrics very early, as a child. And I didn't understand why music did that to me. Like, I remember outside of just the dreams, when I listened to music, there was a sense of healing that was happening to me. Okay, and then I remember then my aunt was an active ZCC church member.
That's amazing.
And we used to have these things, they call them
yes,
at ZCC. And so when these people come, I'd find myself dancing with them, singing with them. You know, I was a child, but I was a part of that, and it was doing something for me. And I'll tell you how that connects now in my years where I've now discovered that I've got this thing, right? But so music played a very pivotal role in how I was brought up. A day without music at home was very, very weird. Because every day there'd be music, especially weekends. But there was this sense of just community and coming together. My mom used to host, they used to call them kitchen parties back in the day.
The society.
And and it was filled with music.
I can picture this in my head. Yeah.
And so as time went on, I think we were in high school, very early in high school. My brother and I would just literally sit in our bedroom and we'd listen to music. And we had this thing where if I hear a song, I'll be like, have you heard this song?
Yeah.
And he'll do the same, you know. I remember my first physical CD was TKZ that my grandmother had bought for me. And also that's a gift because I didn't even look at it that way.
Yes.
But she went out because she saw how much we love music, and we actually shared that copy, my brother and I. It was a TKZ Shibobo album, right? And we used to play that to ends, we just would not stop playing it. And we enjoyed just being very musical. So my brother, back to the story of my brother and I, we used to sit in the bedroom, we'll listen to music. And when we got to varsity, my brother literally started fiddling with CDJs.
Wow.
And before you know it, he's a DJ. And so this gift actually pushed him further than just, a DJ in the house. He's actually one of the well-known DJs in the Val right now.
Wow, that's amazing.
He went on to win competitions in, DJ competitions. He went on to win those. And then I was just an active listener, enjoying my music. Cool. And so later on, when I discovered that I have this gift, the gift of healing, I remember having vivid dreams of Erykah Badu singing.
Wow.
And
different.
I'd have dreams of Kanye West singing. I'm like, what does
happening?
This even mean? Up until I remember when I started hearing music differently, and I realized that I was hearing music different to everybody else because of the way I was reacting to it, and everybody else was like, damn girl, you are feeling your music, you know? I'd go to gigs, I'd go to house music gigs, and I'm there, and I know every song, I know the titles. It's like a photographic kind of memory where I know exactly what song it is, who made the song, and I'm reacting to it, right? Okay, cool. So at that time, I was still in the very, I didn't even know, but I was dreaming in music, and I was singing in my dreams, and then my grandmother passed away.
Sure.
When my grandmother passed away, things are starting to now reveal themselves, and they're starting to become a lot more clearer. And so when I started my podcast, it was just after she'd passed away, and I was like, what do I do with my life now, And so I started this podcast just because I'd gone to Nduduzo Makatini show, and I got there, and it was just hitting me from a different level. Yeah. I could not explain to anybody how I was feeling, but I was like, I need the story behind this music. I need to understand why this person is touching me like this, and is making music that sounds like this. Only to discover that at home, in fact, we have a very musical lineage, right? One of my grandfathers actually, in fact, my grandmother, my immediate grandmother, used to play meropa. They call it meropa in Sepedi. She used to play meropa from the evening until sunrise.
Shucks.
Right? And she'll play until sunrise, and people are dancing. And so that is the song thing that we're talking about. Izangoma, they come together and they're dancing and they're healing.
I literally have goosebumps every single time you speak about your grandmother. And I think for me, people don't know this about me, but my mom is Pedi, and I never talk about that aspect. But as I'm sitting here, my hairs are standing up, and it's this is why you were sent to go speak to Vivian, So my great-grandfather, Kikhoshi Kholu Mutala, who is one of the people who I guess was a royal healer of the Pedi nation and of Pedi descent. And I think as you talk to that, literally my body is having chills because it's oh, dude, this is that one thing would say, oh, we sent you there, because you don't understand sometimes how these things link up. So I feel like as you're speaking, I'm also learning, because now I can't even speak Pedi right, guys, which is quite sad. I think I've even done an interview where someone said to me, yeah, but why are healers so like Nguni? Why do you guys always have to be Zulu? And I was like, unfortunately, it's just the house I grew up in. But if we have to do the math in terms of like Zulu, Sotho, I'm more actually on the other end of the spectrum. But because of lack of exposure and lack of being within that cycle and circle, you end up being displaced actually, So as you speak, I'm like, sure, this is so different.
You're reminded,
I think even Mpoho, so my son, Kimulobed, so there's certain things where when you're speaking, it's sparking in my mind, which, oh my gosh, guys, like, we think Uguti, even when I'm sent here to have a conversation with you, it's just a chat. But maybe I could be here to be schooled and to learn certain things about the culture that I didn't even know. Because I know about Miropa, but I didn't know it from this context. So I want you to go on. But just know I'm quiet because I'm having a different bodily experience as you speak, which has not happened to me.
So she was doing that as a young woman. She used to do that. She used to play Meropa until sunrise, and so Meropa come with what they call malopo.
Yes.
Malopo is what the Nguni people will refer to as ukita.
Yes.
And so they used to do this thing all the time. So that baby actually have this gift that they call malopo, where you literally dance and lilopo lahao. Lilopo is an angel, comes through. And so that's one of the things I've come to understand as well. My link to music is because right? I dance, like I have to dance. My healing comes from that, and that's why music is so important to me.
That's beautiful.
So when I started the podcast, Duduzo was just speaking to me on that stage, and I was like, damn, I have to have a conversation with this man. So I had a conversation with him. I did this thing. I did it shaking. I did it out of fear, and I was like, okay, now I've started. I have to be consistent. I have to continue with it. And it's just, man, the kind of response that I received, from people, I was not expecting that kind of response.
But it was beautiful.
Thank you. But I think it's because it had nothing to do with me. It's everybody else that guides me through this process that, is pushing me to, speak the things that I speak, ask the questions that I ask, and be that person where people are able to just open up beyond just the music. I remember speaking to Langa Mavuso, and after our conversation he said, you have a gift of making us wanting to open up. And I was like,
and that
really?
is a gift. Yeah.
And that is a gift, right? Because we're all gifted so differently. And as I come to understand my gift, I then understand that it's not one-dimensional. Yes, I have Bungaka in my lineage. I have Prophet. I've got everything else. But then there was a gogo that was guiding me through my process, and she said to me, you actually have an Egyptian goddess in
That's
you.
Beautiful.
And she's the one that actually takes care of the musical side of your healing, and she propels you forward. Every time that you speak, every time that you play and DJ, like, she literally comes through. And I was like, there's a thing like that?
Yeah, and I think there is. And I think maybe we need to talk to that, because, I mean, for me, it's crazy to me that you would say that someone else told you that, For me, it was different in that I grew up and I would work in agencies, and there would be Mozambican people there working there, right? And I've never been to Mozambique, but I'd be in the kitchen and they'd be maybe making a joke, and suddenly I would be laughing, and everybody would stare at me like, how did you hear us?
Oh, wow.
And I started to understand that even language is not something that's like one-dimensional. So that can be passed down to you through the generations. This is why I know how to speak Tonga and understand Tonga, but I've never in my life been around those kinds of people. But it was because my people were from those people at some point in my history or in my lineage. And that's why, to me, like, I sometimes ask myself, yo guys, how much do we really know about African spirituality? Because you could think, for example, that African spirituality means that, but you could be global. You know, and I think when you talk about the Egyptian side, maybe I could share, like, my sister just became a healer, right? But my sister's name is Guru Barbara.
Wow.
You know, my sister, people would always say over the years, you look Indian, you know. But then as soon as this name came, everybody has been like, what is happening? Who's this Guru Barbara? And if other healers stop her, they would be like, oh, you need to get yourself Krishna cards. Have you heard of Krishna? The energy of Krishna as a god comes over us when we see you as a person. And that has invoked a different sort of like curiosity, even in myself, you know, because I'm like, oh, you special, you different. Where are you getting this Krishna from? You know? But have you tried to like tap into that aspect of you?
So I remember at the very, very, very early stages of my gift unraveling, I used to astral travel to Egypt. And I remember, because I then went to Google to find these buildings that I was in. The first building was like this white building. And I used to like literally every night, and I could feel my spirit leave. I could feel it leave and go to this place. And it's so whimsical, and I'm traveling in this building, and I'm like, what am I doing here? But how I know I was astral traveling is because I was in the exact same clothes that I slept in, and I was not wearing shoes, and I didn't understand, right? So it happened the first time. I was like, it's just the dream, you know, and I dismissed it. Second time, third time, I was like, no, there's something here, you know? And so I Googled this, and I found like a piece of information about this building, because, you know, Egypt is like, you know, the genesis, the beginning of, you know, Africans. And then when Gogo said, you have this Egyptian goddess in you, and I was always very drawn to like Egyptian stuff, you know, like their costumes, their tarot cards. I was always drawn to that type of thing, but I just didn't understand why. So I think a lot of the times we dismiss our intuition and our guides, because we are guided to those things, right? Like everything around us informs what is happening in us and our history. So every time I then see these things, and I'll dream of these things, and I'm very numerologically led. So then I started seeing these numbers, and I was like, what is happening? Because in my head, I'm like, okay, my grandfather was a Betty healer.
And that's all there is.
He was a bone thrower, and that's all there is to it. And my word, when I tell you that all I needed to do was just open up my mind a little bit further, and just like you're saying, be curious, you know, because curiosity really, really does help in uncovering information, especially as far as our lineages are concerned. And so, like, this lady, literally, at one point, she came through in my dreams, and she was talking to me, you know. We're having an entire conversation. I was like, okay.
Shucks.
All right. So
and language-wise, could you, like, understand what she was saying?
I can't tell you what language it was, but I understood it.
That is crazy.
I understood it. And it's crazy. That's why I don't believe in, you know, when people say, when you patla, you must patla in your native language.
I get it.
I'm like, spirit understands your spirit understands, it knows.
Yes, but also I think it's different, right? Because depending on what is happening at the time, I even speak Swati sometimes, and I'm like, no guys, I'm not Swati. What just happened? How did I go into that zone where suddenly, like sound wise, I sound like somebody else? So I think I get it. It's just that obviously I'm more old school, right?
Yeah.
So I've been taught in that way,
in a certain way.
And I think that's the other reason why these conversations are interesting for me, right? Because I've come to a place in my life where I've been taught a certain way, but everything in my journey has proved to be different, So I woke up one morning, and I always tell the story. I was literally, if Bati in class, the dumbest student there. I was always the one who didn't grasp the concepts. I was always the one who, when we were taught the semantics of what ubunyanga is, I was always the blonde person in the room, The only thing I had was a gut instinct in me that told me that this means something. So over time, it's like I've had this bit of an inclination that says to me that healing is not linear. You need not look at it in that way. And I think it's unfortunate that we don't do that sometimes, because then we'll only look at the umguni, then we'll only look at the undao. We'll never get to, I say to people, I even hear how people will interpret maybe abalozi, I'm like, okay, that's different, but that hasn't maybe been my experience of them. But then maybe I shouldn't say what my experience of them has been, because then I start to feel like, why does it feel like, because we have naming conventions for these guides, for example, then they seem to stick to a particular box, and that's like all that it is. So me sitting here with you is confirming that actually it's not like that, because how is it that I could come here, sit with Vivian, who is Betty, but suddenly, all of a sudden, there are Egyptian people who also come up in her, and Swabizan Gebo, because we can't call them Amanda.
Exactly.
We can't call them Amanda.
Yeah, we can't.
And I think it's an aspect that maybe we need to look at in a deeper sense. Then what do we call them?
So, at least my view or understanding of it is, because our soul has had different lives, right? And I don't know how many lives I've had, but I know, because my dreams inform that I have had other lives before, and that I have met other people before. When I go through a deja vu moment, I know that I have been here before. So what I think is happening is that I was there in Egypt. I lived there. I had a life there.
That's beautiful.
Right? And so I'm remembering, because also what we dismiss again is that us being here on earth as spiritual beings, having a human experience, again, we are literally remembering our genesis, where we come from, and that's why we have things like karmic cycles, because we have soulmates, because there are things perhaps in the past that you didn't get to experience, and then you are granted another soul now, so that you can experience that, but understand it. And that's why we also go through the process of healing.
Yeah, that's so crazy, because I know you're saying it differently, but what I'm hearing then is that the Vivian that I sit with today, who is a healer, is a mere extension of the people who've lived before her. And so I want to tap into this to say, and that's why Vivian's life is the way that it is, because it's a representation, rather, of all these different people who maybe she's been before, and suddenly she gets to like merge them, but maybe into a better version of them, And I think I want to also talk to that, because I have a lot of sessions with people where, like, I'll sit with someone and the person maybe is in mathematics, for example, and I'm like, oh no, but you should be a farmer, that is the only thing that I see you being gifted with, whatever. And people get puzzled to say, like, why are you seeing it this way and not like my way? And I always try and explain to people, Guti, for me, we're always sort of expanding on the view of someone who came before us, you know. So I believe in more of the Indian caste system and the reality that we are born into certain lives and certain cycles, and we come into being in order for us to expand on that. So, for
100%.
example, I come from a family of teachers, right? I'm unfortunately a teacher in the space of healing, let's say. But, and I say unfortunately because nobody wants to be a Kobela girl. But as soon as I understood it that way, it became something completely different to me.
Yeah.
You know, I started to understand, okay, this is why I must teach, because Ukokwami, who's my great-grandmother, I just called her Ukoko, was a headmistress, and everybody else was like a teacher. Oh, so this thing is in me.
It's in your blood.
You know? And then the only way that I've been able to unpack it is that, let me do it then my way, which is Nomi's way of like, I'll do a podcast, I'll do this, I'll do that.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want a physical classroom, you know? But it's so interesting to me because now I want to know, like, how have you then used your healing gifts and what you know now about your guides to propel you forward?
So, and I think it has nothing to do with me, honestly. Like, it has nothing to do with me. But I was thinking the other day, like, how my whole life, and if we look at it in a sense of a career, my whole life I've been put into spaces where I was able to travel.
Yes.
Like literally outside of the country. My first trip out of the country, I was actually with Joyous. You know, Joyous was recording in America, and I was the PR person.
Wow.
And it's that thing of also favor spotting you.
Yes.
Because I wasn't the only person that was working on that account, but I was the one that was chosen to travel with them, right? And that is when I realized that, no, man, this thing is deeper than I think it is, right? Eye. Especially now I'm traveling with a gospel crew. And I remember every time I used to go on tour with Joyous. For a good 2 years, I was on tour with Joyous. And I would sit in their shows and I will watch them from the time they perform at 8 until 2 a.m. when they're done. And I would just get lost in it. Again, the music thing.
Yes.
There's that thread again. And I was like, hi, man.
That's beautiful.
What is happening here? You know?
That's
and
beautiful.
Then, so I left. I went on tour with them for 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I was like, who would have ever thought that I could leave South Africa? You know? I come from a very middle class family. You know, I've had to like make sure that I'm fighting and I'm doing these things, but favor was always like there. You know, I always had favor, and I found myself in these spaces that I did not once imagine myself to be in. I managed Bonang, I managed Mikasa. I was always with people that are very popular, and I still don't. I have it. I can't fathom like now why it continues to happen. Even where I work now, like the people that I encounter, but now the wheels have turned. I've become that person. You know, I've become the popular girl where people are like, they value my presence, they value my opinion, but I'm like, I'm a healer and it's draining. So I can't, there are spaces I can't be in.
Yes, I understand you fully.
But just to backtrack to the point I was trying to make is that I was then that person that was leaving. You know, I was dipping in oceans that are foreign.
Yes.
And I didn't understand why.
I think my next question is going to be different, and that's why I'm getting emotional. Because I find that people always highlight the dark side of healing, you know, that they never highlight the favor that comes with becoming a healer. It's very few people who have moments like this where they can say that, you know, if I look at it, this could only have been my gift, you know, that propelled me forward. Maybe even in times when I had not taken it on, you know. And I think I have the same issue where I sometimes have conversations with people to say, I think I was 14, guys. I was 14. So if I knew then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have been so resistant, you know. So my question more is like, why do we do that? Like, why do we as African people doubt that our guides would be the ones that propel us forward?
I think humans are scared of evolving. We're scared of evolving and living. We're so comfortable with permanence. We love permanence, and I'll speak for myself as well. When I realized that I have this thing, you know, it has skipped at least 2 generations within the lineage, and now it's gotten to a point where I don't have a choice because, and I'll just highlight the fact that in the year that my twin brother and I were born, my uncle had twins that very same year.
Beautiful.
And both of them, boy and girl as well, they were born in June. My brother and I were born in August. But of course, the gift needed to be contained within the maternal side of the family. So we are the ones that had to take it. But I remember the things that my grandmother used to say, you know, she treated us like ridikar.
Yes.
Like we are the not even the healers, but we are the thing.
But do you know in Zulu that's what twins are? Like amakhosi, you know. So it's almost like you are the royalty in the home at the time.
Yeah.
And so we do need to treat you that way.
I had no idea, but I everything started to make sense later. You know, some things, unfortunately, in life, we go through things and then they make sense later. And when they do, you have this aha moment. You're like, okay, I get why.
Yeah,
I get it. And so when this happened for us, I was scared because as a child, we weren't very active within the African spirituality space. My grandmother, was very like, natlabela badimo, bujwala ba badimo, you know, naritlapisa, this, that, but it wasn't as intense as the work that I've had to do now.
Really?
You know, so I was scared because I didn't know what that meant for me, you know, and I think the thing about it is that we were very quick to think that, now I must leave my corporate job and I must go and sit in the Ndumba. It's different for everybody.
It is. And I think that's why I also wanted to speak to you, because that was the trap that I was in, you know. I had this thing like, oh my gosh, I've gone to school. Why would they want to do this to me? I'm so young. Oh my gosh. And then, like, I've been so disappointed every single year.
Yeah.
Because in terms of growth, I've always been balanced in terms of my growth, you know. Like, it's always been so crazy how I'll grow in this area of my life and my healing will grow and whatever. But I also, this is why I'm asking you this question, is that I realize that it's only few people who have that as a privilege, you know. So I want to know if you think there's a thing in our minds that makes this thing that way, or is it just that way and different for everybody, you know?
So I think it's because it's what we know. It's a sense of familiarity. We automatically think that if you have a gift, you must go practice in your Ndumba, which is not necessarily the case, right? And I think the period between 2020 and now has informed the fact that some people, and even if when they come out, it doesn't mean that they must go sit in the Ndumba. They've done the work. They were there to fix and heal their lineage, and then they can continue with their life. Yes, right?
That's true.
And then some of us were not required because we we come from a family or a lineage that is they esteem themselves very highly because they're royalty, and they like
And
we're
I
going
want
to
to
teach
to
them.
that as well, because I've found a different experience for myself in that I think why my first experience was not correct was because I was not cognizant of what you're saying. I was not cognizant of the fact that when you're of a royal lineage and bloodline, you should not be touched by anybody else. It's not anybody also
Yeah.
for example.
Yeah.
And I think we don't talk to that enough. This is why I say, for me, the caste system is very important, because I've suddenly been able to understand you cannot be touched by everybody. Ganjani. Not anybody can do your thing.
Yeah.
And I think so my Kobela you know, and that is the only reason, guys, that she was then able I'm fehle.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it clicked in my mind one day to say, so how I met my Kobela, I think I probably say the story. I met her in a mall. And I think it's because my guides were tired and they were like, she's not getting it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But me meeting that woman in the mall, it made so much sense later. Even just yesterday, I was thanking her, you know, to say that I don't know how I bumped into you in that mall on that day, but ever since I met you, because when and I could go on with the number of royal lineages I come from, only you were able to do what we've been able to do over the years. And people, I don't think they know this. You know, they don't know that you can't ube umntana wasebukhosini uthinto unoma ubani. Impahla zakho ziyahluka azifani nezanoma ubani.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that's also like in the healing space, people do not ever highlight this.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I didn't know either, right? I didn't know. And I remember, because dilo tsa rona re ba pedi and they have to be done in the Sepedi way, which is very different, right? And you'll meet people and they'll tell you that you're gifted, yes, okay. But my first person actually that revealed the fact that although your whole life informs you that you're gifted, because you're not a normal person, you're not like everybody else. But my first encounter with someone who actually said you're gifted was a white woman who is a tarot reader.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd just come back. I had gone to a solo trip in Bali and I did the Eat, Pray, Love thing. And I came back and I was like, I need to see a tarot reader just to kind of like, you know, because I wasn't really that into the bones. And I was like, let me see a tarot reader, you know, let's hear what she's got to say. I go there. And this woman literally, as she reads the cards, she is hitting everything on the head as it is. And she says to me, you're gifted. What is it? She can't tell it. She can't tell me. She can't articulate it. She's a white person. Again, you know, blacks are blacks and white people are white people. And we understand the space of spirituality differently, even though it does come together at some point. But at the time, and then I was like, this woman, okay, cool. And then things started to go south. And you know, when they come in,
they don't play.
Because they have taken me to this point of meeting different people, and they tell me,
yes, but you're not
but
hearing.
but I'm also not understanding what these people are saying. What are you saying, you know?
And maybe also that, like, I want to know, because that's another thing. I don't know if you experienced this, but I found my experience of being guided on the actual path was different to when I speak to a lot of other healers who would say, like, my grandmother directly came to me and said A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
I did not have that experience. I sort of had what you are kind of describing, where it's almost like I get what you're saying, that I'm gifted.
Yeah.
But nobody else is communicating this to me. And I'm doing the travels, I'm doing all of the things that you're saying you're doing in your sleep. But no one is saying, ya kontlung ya kusmangmang, kana ko ena, uloyetan to e.
Yes. So again, going back to your intuition, because there is nothing that will inform you as much as your intuition does. Even if a healer comes to you and says something, you need to listen to your intuition. And so I think because we're both Virgos, naturally we're very highly in tune.
Yes.
We're very, like, our intuition is like on volume 100, right? And at the time, I think my volume was still very low in terms of my intuition. And so because things were starting to not go well in my in my waking life, and I wasn't understanding, I wasn't understanding. Money had stopped coming in because I'm naturally a very lucky person, and there were things, man, that were just going wrong, and I was like, man, something ain't right. And then the dreams started, and I think that the reason why I was missing the dreams is because my ancestors are literally like, they are ancient people that I don't know. I only ever hear of them. I don't know what my grandfather looks like.
Yeah,
the one who's gifted us, right? So I didn't know them, but as soon as my grandmother passed, she was the one that was now playing mediator, right? And that's why the gift was now it was hard. Hitting. It was coming very hard after she had gone, because now someone that I know is communicating with me, but she's coming with all of these people and she's introducing them, right? And the dreams are also like very vivid. Like, I'd wake up remembering, and I started journaling. I think between 2020 and 2021, I must have filled about 5 journals that I still have now, because they were just coming in very fast. Even the things that I need to do, where I need to go. Like, they're very much about me going home and doing things the Pedi way.
That's
and
beautiful.
So I've had to like travel to Limpopo, I've had to like learn the lineage, and now I must go to the old people that are still alive so that they can tell me.
Yes.
Because there are some things that my mother does not know that I have to go ask my grandmother's sister and be like, okay, so then what happened? And she'd tell me, she's like, yo, papa, mutole, but never talk over. So we have a village called MaChuene, which is like literally a Chuene village. Everybody that is in there is my family, my uncles, everybody's there. And so ke MaChuene, ke leboa kgomo, ke ramaja, ke ramphatlele. So it's quite a distance, as you know, in the farms, and so arikonna papa nana le di patient di tloga ga maja ga mphatlele. Everybody used to come to see him.
Beautiful.
And he said, and she says, one of his specialities, Nantadikoma, Nantadikoma, for those that don't know, ke initiation schools. So nana le naka la koma. And also he was very good ka popelo ya basadi. So he used to heal women. And as a result, I had an issue with my womb.
That is crazy.
I had an issue with my womb, and that's what it looks. That's what healing looks like. Sometimes the things that you need to heal within yourself are things that your ancestors they were literally very good with them, or they had those ailments, and now those ailments have been passed on to you.
100% know this.
So it's been like, it was a very interesting time where I'm meeting all of these ancestors, and then once I have met all of them and everybody's asking for their own things, and I remember then meeting Ugogo, who was literally just helping facilitate and unpack things for us. And she was not doing any work actively, but just guiding us and teaching us and saying, okay, this is what you do.
Yes.
After that, I've never ever had to go with a healer to the waters, because also, again, they do not want to go to rivers that are infiltrated with people, that have a lot of people. So every time that my brother and I would go to the waters,
my crown is doing a completely different movement as you speak.
Yeah, and we'll get there, and if there are people, like they'll make space for us. And I've again understood that favor.
Yes.
Because that is favor. It speaks to the kind of favor that we have, but also understanding that this gift is so sacred.
Yeah.
This gift is like, as heavy as it is, it's so sacred, and it comes from people that used to value and see themselves. So in the same way, you must also value yourself. You must also see yourself in the spaces that you walk in, you know. And yeah, so that's really what it looks like.
I want to ask a tough question here. And enemies, you know, like, have you found that you've started building more and more enemies as you've taken on this gift? I don't know why they're saying I must ask this.
So I don't look at them as enemies. I have lost a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I have come to understand that people are also seasonal.
Yes.
And when you are moving into a space of alignment,
yes,
there are certain people that will not align with you anymore.
That's amazing.
And so they will hold grudges. If you're going to hold a grudge and look at them as enemies, then you are opening up an entire
new world, yes,
you know, that you don't want to exist in. Yes, there are attacks that will come from people that see you, that they see your gift and
yeah.
But we don't focus on those things, because those are the things that will have us vibrating lower.
Yes.
Right. So we want to continue to vibrate high. We let people do. I mean, within the space of us actually fixing things for our ancestors, not really deep gobuloing as well. You know, it was here, there, and it was very confusing, because you're like, am I things stagnant because I get to do
yes, or is it other forces?
Busy. But again, we had to go through that because they were teaching us.
Yes, that this is actually what
this is what it looks like. So, and also strengthening us, because then how are you going to be a warrior that is going to war when you are not equipped?
That's so true.
So they were equipping us, and now I'm in a space of, okay, sharp, I know, I understand that there are those people, but
yes, it's not like
I'm
for
not
me. This is not my focal point. I love that.
Yeah,
that is so crazy. Okay, I think we've actually said a lot. So what I want to know now, which I've asked everyone else, is like, what then is the next chapter for Vivian, you know, on this path in particular, and what does it mean for the future?
So I think more than ever, I've never felt a sense of alignment like I do now. And I'm happy, because that means Lebadimu are happy. You know, Mudimu's happy with my work, and they continue to propel me forward. So what's next, I don't know, but I'm open to receiving and seeing what is next. I'm always very optimistic. I'm always like, you know, let's move, let's do this thing. And what
about helping people? Tell us, because, you know, for me, I've had interactions recently actually where I'm being sent a lot of 80 people, you know, but as soon as the person sits down, I immediately understand that I can't help them, you know. So luckily, maybe a few weeks before that, I was given one person where it was like, actually my neighbor, you know, who one day I just went to check on her, and she started explaining a journey similar to yours about Sipedi and how she now works with this. And I was like, oh, okay, I can start referring you guys there, maybe, for example. But I think for me, it's to say, are we at a stage now where Vivian is seeing people, or are we at a stage where Vivian is like, no, I'm still focusing on building for my guides and let them tell me when it's time, you know, because maybe I'm here to fetch you.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
So they're very spontaneous in their ways. And I remember, like, when I started, like, doing readings on people, like, weird groove, I'm like, oh, guys.
Yeah,
and
what's
I
happening?
would say these things, and literally the next day I've forgotten.
Yes.
I now have, like, permanent memory loss, because like I say things and I don't remember them, and I'll have people call me and like, they like, dude, you actually said something that is so true and interesting. And I'm like, I said that.
Yeah.
You know, but I've also come to learn that there are certain spaces that I can't,
Yes.
you know, but I guess they were teaching me at the time. But right now I'm in a space of the people that need help that come to me, and then they don't actively come to me.
Yes.
I randomly like bump into people randomly. I'll find myself at a friend's house, and then someone is there that I need to help or relay a message, you
Yes.
know. But what I've come to understand is because I am very water heavy.
Yes.
I work with water and prayer. I remember, I think there are about, I won't say the number, but there are a few people that I have just said to them, do this. So I'm able to intuitively tell you what to do to trigger your blessing.
Wow. That's
So
beautiful.
that's where my journey is right now, where I'm able to just literally tell you, if you say, hey, what's about the or if you are sick, I'm like, okay,
do this
because I've seen it work for me.
That's beautiful.
It's things that I've seen work for me, and a lot of people that have actually come to me are people that were looking for jobs and they were struggling. And I remember I had a period where like I could not find work. I was like, what the hell is going on? But they were like, you must do our work first, and then when you are done, we'll open up that. But now I'm able to tell somebody, and I have seen it. I've seen the results. But also, like, you know, just literally teaching people how to meditate and be mindful, especially with their words, because words create. I've come to learn the power of prayer, but also the power of words, because words create. And that's why we must be mindful of the things that we say to ourselves and to each other, because everything that we say, the universe is always listening.
And I always say this to people. Like, I know for me, I normally say this to my initiates, to be like, you know, whatever you do in the space that you're doing it in, right? Just know that they see you and they're watching you.
Yeah.
So whatever you do, you think you're doing this for me. Obviously, I would be like, you know. But what I'm normally trying to always say is that remain cognizant of your environment, because your environment hears you all the time. It sees you all the time. It understands who you are, you know. And I think that's why I was asking the question about enemies as well, you know, because I've had a deep difficulty with the better I've done, almost the more people want to drag me, you know. And I've always wanted to understand that balance, because sometimes you're like, in your head, you're like, but oh my gosh, I'm such a, you know, I'm trying my best, you know. Why do, like, they see me and they see the opposite, you know. And I've battled sometimes with that, even though I get it that, yeah, no, you have to, because we always say this, you have to get past it, you know, don't give people that power. But there will be days where you feel like your gift is a hammer, you know, and almost everything wants to beat against this hammer. And I've started to now understand it differently. Like, oh no, it's usually the people that don't understand themselves, you know, who haven't found that sense outside of being in calamity, you know. But I always sort of ask other healers these questions, because I think it's a good way to learn, you know. It's a good way to understand also that we all face these challenges. It's not just, oh, you see Kokonomi and she's always happy, she's on radio, whatever, so her life looks perfect on the outside. But the reality is we continue on such a long journey on spirituality alone, you know. So I feel, I don't know, thank you so much, because I feel a different sense of gratitude just after having sat with you. And I feel like also it's that thing of like, you know, when you knew you were going to fetch something, but you feel like it's invoking another part of even who you are as a person, you know. And I think it's because, guys, we downplay the Bedi and Sutu work in healing like so much, you know. And people don't know, Uguti, it's such a different way of healing, you know. I think for me, what happened to me was when I went to Istunya, I actually felt like being a patient Lesotho, you know. So it means you know, it became something where it's like, yo, dude, this is like a completely different world, but this world is so Sotho, you know. Moving away from Ikobong or moving away, so almost like that. For me, Isunya brought that balance, you know, where it was like, oh, the people ohamba nabo laba bakhulekayo kusho ukuthi kahle kahle bebasebenzisa inkambi zesuthu more than what you even think and know and understand. And it was a very interesting world for me, because like even when I train about maybe kibasiya kibomang, and another person would be confused because all of the other kids I train, it's funny when they greet, it's span wakadlamini, you know.
Oh, wow.
But as soon as I tapped into the Sotho part of me, like you can almost see, wait, this is literally the other half of her that walks around with her. And it's such an interesting journey because the way they work is just so different.
It's different,
you know.
It's different.
I think for me, thank you, because also sometimes we speak to healing as a generic, you know. And for me, this is why I have these conversations, to sort of get into a space where we understand it's not the same, guys.
It's not.
We're not gonna have the same answer for every single thing, and maybe the problem is we look at it that way. You know, the problem is that you're looking for your guides to communicate with you in this particular way, which they might never do, you know. So I think a conversation like this gives room to the people that feel also like misfits, where you know you're gifted and you know you're different, but like you're different and everybody else is different is not the same, you know. And fine, there's work to be done, you know, maybe even going home and doing that, but maybe that is the way and that's the right way, you know, because then you come back and you almost like know a lot about who you are. Because I think that's the one advice I always give people. If I see you and you're gifted, like I would normally say to you, I'm giving you homework. Go find out who you are, because the problem here is that this thing will come together as all four parts of who you are. You know, so if you don't understand these four parts, you'll be expecting that this thing is who you lived with in the house, and then suddenly there's like 500 other men and women.
There's literally
in your space that literally operate differently, and when you have to satisfy them or put this thing together, you're gonna feel like it's clashing. You know, so I'm so grateful. I think, you know, it's so funny how ancestors pick, because they have a list, you know. And I was like, what is this thing? Why are you guys like giving me these names and whatever? I thought that I was doing this whole thing for fun, but now it's almost like it's something else, you know. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I think even around the gift of music, I am going to tag all of Vivian's social channels and just make sure that you guys have her information. But, you know, I want people to understand that music is also healing, you know. There is a part of us, even myself, guys. You know, my Kobela said to me when I came back from Istunya, oh my gosh, she came back and you can sing.
Wow.
You used to sound like a goat, but you actually can sing now. And I think it's because as soon as my consciousness started shifting, you know, I realized that we almost let other people sing through us. Musically, there are words that we hear in the music that heals us too, you know. And I want people to hold on to that as well. Uguti, you know, this is like there are different subjects. Umuti, yes, exists, but music as well exists. And that's why when we call on healers, really, you know, or it's really because the music behind it tells so many stories about us as people, about us as like generations and the places we've been to. Like I've heard songs Mkitini, you know, guys, and I would literally feel my body sort of like traveling to like a different place, but I'm on the chair. And as soon as that song plays, I'm like, where the hell have I heard this before? You know? And so that's why sometimes I'd listen to Vivian, and when she'd speak, I'd be like, I hear something else, and I think I just met that something else today.
Wow.
So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Tobela. And so just in closing, while we're on that music thing, I think what we need to remember is the universe speaks in music.
Yes.
The water.
Yes.
There are a lot of songs that were produced using the ocean. There are songs produced using the sound of birds. So music in itself is a universal language. So I guess that's my parting words.
I was gonna ask you parting word, but it was gonna be different, right? So what I normally ask the healers is like what's your message to someone else who's trying to tap into their gift and they finding that maybe they are hitting a brick wall?
I think one, and I'll say this because that has saved me so many times, listening to intuition. There is nothing, guys, that will ever surpass your own intuition. That voice, that inner voice, it's innate, and it will tell you if something is right or wrong. And then secondly, being curious, ask the questions. Go to your family, go to the ones that have walked on this path before, even if they didn't take on the gift, but they've lived. They've had experiences with your grandmothers, your grandfathers. They have the answers. Because they really do have the answers, and that's how I was able to find the answers, to connect the dots, because sometimes it's very hard to understand the language of dreams.
Yes.
As much as they come in, and and now I can interpret dreams.
Yes.
I'm like, damn, I don't know, like I could get to this point, but I think one is listening to your intuition, and secondly, just asking the questions and making sure that you keep that curiosity, on. You just keep it on. And then thirdly, pray, guys. There's nothing like God. There is no one like God. God hears us. God sees us. God is omnipresent. He's surrounding us. He's guiding us. He's guiding our very ancestors.
Yes.
So prayer.
Beautiful.
I've found that prayer has helped me, in moments where I was like, I don't even know what to do. Even when you feel like you can't pray anymore, God hears our hearts. So your intentions, always keep your intentions pure, and know what your intentions are. I guess those are my parting words.
So guys, thank you so much. Oh my gosh.